Hello, welcome to a brief session on setting up DAC Trade Show Manager. In this session, it will be fairly short and we'll walk you through the basic steps involved in setting up DAC Trade Show Manager for your show. Beginning from the DAC menu, if you take option 3 for the billing system, then option 22 for remote orders, you'll see option 20 on this menu that says Trade Show. Take that option. Basically, we're going to cover primarily some things in option number 1 here. Maybe a brief glimpse of option number 2 from the menu. So the first thing you'll want to do is to define your show. So I'm going to take option 1, and I have a couple of shows already set up in here, but I want to set up a brand new one from the beginning. So you give it a show number. So I'm going to give mine show number 3 and press enter. And it asks me if I would like to add a new trade show record, and I'm going to say yes. And then it brings me to a place to enter a description. So I can say training video for show 2016, whatever you want to call it. If it's the active show, which it probably will be if you're setting up your first one, you say yes to that. Then you give it a date range. I'm going to set up my date range from the 1st of June through the 31st of December of this year. What you'll want to do is set these date ranges to the maximum end date that you would still be shipping product out from the show. So I'm going to press enter. The group I'm going to leave blank because we don't actually need that. You can use it as a way to find pre-book orders, but there's another method that I'll show you in a second. We're going to press enter, confirm. Now we have another show started here, and it is the active show. That's a thing for convenience to drive you to the proper show. The next thing we want to do is set up some options. So I'm going to press F20, which you see down here. So F20 takes me to something that looks like this. There are some defaults in here. I suggest that you set these first 3 fields all to no. We don't want a PIN number at the booth. We don't want the booth operator to be able to unlock dates. We don't want the booth operator to be able to unlock points. Those are atypical settings, so you would want to leave those to no to defeat those properties. The other entry up here that is important is whether you're going to give off invoice allowances, or you're going to reflect special pricing on the invoice, or are you going to define those as points that you accrue and do something with it at another time instead of an off invoice type of discount or special price? So I've got mine set up to do an A for an allowance. You can also do points, and those are slightly different. In a future segment, we'll talk about the differences between those. You can also define some codes that float along with every booking that you do through the pre-book system all the way into the order file and the order history. So this is a better method of tracking that type of stuff. So you'll have 2 fields that you can enter whatever you want to in there. For my example here, I put TS for trade show and 16 since my show is taking place in 2016. But those codes can be whatever is meaningful to you. You can have multiple shows within the same year, use different codes to discern the differences between the bookings and pre-books and ultimately the orders that came out of there. One other option is what level of detail you want to export the pre-books with. Do you want to create the booking, have the booking create a separate pre-book order for every customer, every item ship date, or do you want to combine those somewhat? I suggest you start with blank and see how that works for you. Yes, will give you a lot of pre-book orders, which is okay. Just that's a distinction in there. And then there's a little legalese, a little disclaimer that it can appear at the bottom of a recap for a retailer. So I'm going to press enter and confirm those choices there. Now the next thing we'll want to do before we set up booths is we will want to get over and create a pre-book default. So I'm going to take option 19 from this menu. Takes me over to the pre-book orders. This should be the only time we have to come to this menu. I'm going to take option 7 to work with pre-book defaults, and you'll want to set up a single pre-book default, which is actually going to function as the container to hold all of the items for all of the booths. That's probably the best practice to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press F10 to create. I'm going to give it a pre-book number that means something to me. It has to be a pre-book number that's not in use, obviously. I'm going to call mine 2016 just because that's when my show is, but it can be whatever number you choose to make it. I'm going to set my dates up in here to be the same as my trade show. So any special pricing would start for pre-books coming out here on the 1st of June, and it would end on the 31st of December for 2016. You can give it a description, so I'll just say whatever you like it to say. Press enter and confirm. You have an empty shell now, if you want to think of it that way, to drop the items into, and that's all we really have to do on the pre-book menu now. So I press F3 to exit. F3 once more, I'm back to the menu. F3 one more time, and I'm back on the trade show menu. Now we can start setting up some booths. So let's do that. Take option 1. You'll put a B for booth beside your show. So there's a B. Now we have no booths defined. So to define a booth, you'll give it a booth number, and then you'll give it one of these two entries, either a vendor number or a vendor group number. Now the vendor group number is different than the vendor group that buyers use in the vendor master file. This is a specialized type of grouping that we use for that, so there's no conflict. So booth number, some type of vendor definition, either vendor or vendor group, and then the pre-book that contains that will contain the item. So let's just go through one here. So I'm going to say booth number 1. I'm going to say my vendor is, I don't remember a vendor, so I'm going to press F4 to search for that vendor. And I want to set this one up to be, let's say Hershey. So I'm going to grab the Hershey vendor number, and then you need to give it a pre-book number, which is 2016, was the number that we set up, so they can all contain the same thing. And before you press enter again, it might be a good idea to just put some dates in. So I'm going to say 6/15 of this year, then 7/01, 7/15, just some dates to represent what you can do. And you have up to 8 dates, but I'm only going to use a few of these. So there's some dates. So we have a booth number, a vendor number, the pre-book number that's going to contain the items for that booth, and then the default ship dates for that booth. So if I press enter now, it says, do you want to add this booth? And I'm going to say yes. And so now I've added that booth. Now you'll see that these dates down here can be they're entry fields, and so you can change those dates after the fact. You can add another date if you'd like to. So maybe I'm going to put September 1st on there as well. So you can do that type of stuff. Now if you have certain items within a booth that have different ship dates, that's possible too, and I'll show you that in just a moment here. So let's add some items into this booth. So I'm going to do an I beside it to add items, and now I'm back in that pre-book number container directly from the trade show. And if I know the item numbers that I want in that booth that are tied to this vendor, I can just key the item numbers in. But I'm going to show you how to do it with F4. So I press F4, and it shows me items just from that particular vendor. So I can come down here and grab the items that I'm interested in. Press enter again. It brings up a screen to let me put any type of pricing. So since I'm doing allowances, I'm going to give 50 cents off per unit that's sold, and press enter and confirm. So that's added that one. We'll see your promo amount out here. So we'll add a couple other items in here just to sort of give you the flow of things. So let's grab this Hershey almond up here, add that in. Maybe you get 75 cents. And so you see the mechanism to go through. So keying the stuff in, pretty straightforward and normal for DAC type of entry. So that's a couple of items set up in that booth. Now let's set up booth number 2. Now you'll notice my dates and pre-book number have stayed on, so I can just repetitively go through this. So now what I'm going to do is get a different vendor number, and this time let's go for BIC. I'll grab the BIC vendor number, press enter. That booth number 2 does not exist, so press enter again. Now I can add some items in for BIC. And if you need to come back and add more items, it's not a problem. You can come back in at any time and edit to put the I beside and add more items in. Maybe this one gets $2 off. So it's that type of mechanism. Let's drop a few more things in here to sort of go through the steps involved. Okay, so we got a couple items in there. So pretty repetitious after that. And I wanted to show you one other thing, that is the vendor group. So if you have a booth that has items from multiple vendors, maybe it's a broker situation, something of that nature, and you need to grab items from multiple vendors, the vendor group is the best method to do that. So let's set up booth number 3, and let's say it's vendor group 100. Now, a lot of times I like to encourage people to make the vendor group number the same as the booth number, just to avoid a little confusion, but it's certainly not mandatory. Watch what happens when we add booth 3 for vendor group 100. When I press enter, it says, do you want to add it? I say yes. Now, what do I want to name that group? So I can name it, whatever I want to name it, something that's meaningful to you, who the broker is that's in that booth, or whatever's meaningful to you. Press enter, confirm. So now we've got an entry down there. So now if I come down, I haven't defined any vendors that are in that. So if I come in here, if I try to add items, it really doesn't know what vendors are in group 100 yet. So let's do a V beside that booth, since it's the vendor group type of booth. And you'll see there are no vendors in here. So what I can do is I can press F10 to add a vendor to the group. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to search around. Let's see, let's put Blue Bunny in here as the vendor. Let's add one more vendor into that group, and maybe it's Tyson Foods. So you can F4 search and find the vendors to add. And so now we got 2 vendors in that booth. It could be as many as you need to have it be. I'm going to exit out of here with the F3, and now if I come down and put I beside to start adding items, and I come in here and I press F4 to search, you'll see that I have items that are Blue Bunny items, and I have some Tyson items in here because it knows the vendors that are in the group that relate to booth number 3. So it's trying to give you some help in locating what you want to do. Same type of method here. Once I select the item, you can key a cents off amount, off invoice discount. You can come over here and grab a Tyson item. Maybe on this one I don't give a discount, so you can kind of see the mechanics to it. Now these are actually Blue Bunny freezers, so I'm not going to grab one of those because that's not something I'm going to offer in my show. So you get the idea there. So just to recap, a booth is defined by a booth number and either a single vendor or a vendor group. You can grab the vendors and group them together. You can give the group a name. Everything is contained in a single pre-book as the container to hold all of that information. Use I to add items. If you need to come back in and add more Hershey items to that booth, simple as coming back in here and grab some Hershey miniatures. Maybe they're, let's say, 99 cents off. So that type of mechanics there. So that's the primary information here, knowing that those dates can vary by booth, and if you needed them to vary, you could change them down here or change them in the header. As you add a new booth, it grabs whatever you have up here at the top and defaults the booth's ship dates to that. Now I'm going to show you one last thing here, and that is if I go exit out to the menu, option number 3, show items. Now it's added into here all the individual items. So if I want to restrict by booth, I can say show me the items just in booth number 3. There's our Blue Bunny and Tyson items added in there. And the reason I wanted to come here is this is where you would enter different dates for items. If there were certain items that were only available on certain dates, maybe the booth had a date in there of 6/1, like in my example, but I wanted to block that date for this Blue Bunny banana item, and it's not available on that date at all. And maybe I want to offer it on a different date for this date slot. I can do that type of an arrangement. So you can do those types of things to influence the date to item level if you need to. Now there's some grouping and there's some advanced things in there, but this pretty much covers the scope of what we wanted to discuss in this session. So stay tuned. We'll have another session come up that drills a little bit deeper in. Thank you for listening.